Hello, my name is Nick DeAndrea, and my presentation is on the Pantheon. Excuse me. The city of Rome is home to a plethora of monuments that immortalize the genius of Roman society. The Pantheon, thought to be commissioned by the Emperor Hadrian, gets its name from the Greek words pan, which means all, and theos, which means the gods. It is widely believed that Hadrian dedicated its construction to every god worshipped by the Romans during their polytheistic period. However, there is much that is still unknown about this monument. It is estimated that construction began no earlier than AD 117 and finished between AD 126 and AD 128. The Pantheon was one of the Romans' greatest gifts to humanity because of the elegance of its structure, the sophistication of its architecture, and the boldness of its beauty that captivates the world to this day. The structure that stands today, located in the neighborhood of Rome known as the Campus Martius, is a far cry from the original monument. Marcus Agrippa had originally commissioned the construction of the Pantheon in 25 BC during the reign of Augustus. Agrippa's structure did not last long as it fell victim to a variety of natural disasters and fires. When Hadrian eventually ordered its restoration in AD 117, he found himself replacing it with the structure we see today. For reasons unknown, Hadrian kept the original inscription left by Agrippa on his new building. Roman emperors typically left their mark on anything they could, so this came as a surprise to most scholars. The masterpiece that Hadrian commissioned stood in the city of Rome even as time progressed into the Dark Ages and the capital was moved to Constantinople. In AD 609, the current emperor decided to allow Pope Boniface IV to cleanse the temple of its polytheistic nature and consecrate it as a church. By this point in time, the city of Rome was heavily impoverished and was a shell of its former self. The maintenance provided by the temple's conversion to Christianity proved to be crucial in its survival through the years. Once the structure had been ordained into the Christian faith, a popular Roman designation for it became Santa Maria Rotunda. Here are the two major components of the Pantheon that stood out to me. On the left is the cylindrical rotunda, and on the right is the oculus. The first is a cylindrical rotunda that walls the interior of the structure. On top is a concrete dome, which begins to thin out as it reaches a plateau. The highest point of the dome to the floor is the interior, the highest point of the dome to the floor of the interior is about 43 meters, and the diameter of the structure is roughly the same. In the center of the dome is a 9-meter wide gap, known as the oculus. This feature is the only way direct sunlight can enter the structure. Otherwise, it is only possible for indirect sunlight to enter through the large north-facing doorway. The Pantheon also has a portico-style entrance with 16 monolith columns supporting a tile roof. A small porch lies underneath these columns. The cylindrical rotunda was constructed out of a mix of brick and Roman concrete. It would be an understatement to say that this portion of the Pantheon is complex. Despite many scholars spending years studying its dimensions, the knowledge that is currently available is still inadequate. What is known for certain is that the composition of this structure was assembled using a systematic set of dimensions. For example, by either drawing this out or visualizing it in your mind, a square can be etched into the rotunda that can be flipped to define the limits of the portico. The precision in its design leads many scholars to wonder which Roman engineer was capable of such a feat. Although it is not known for certain, there is evidence to suggest that it was Apollodorus of Damascus. The oculus is another profound aspect of the Pantheon. While the oculus bears partial resemblance to a roof sundial, which was a device used to tell the time of day using sunlight, it appears that midday is the only time of day that maintains consistencies in the interior. However, it is not impossible to think that the Pantheon may have originally been constructed as some form of a timekeeper. The material used to construct the facade of the Pantheon, its interior, and all 16 columns came primarily from two locations, Greece and Egypt. Quarries near Athens supplied the Romans with a white marble used throughout the structure and the sculptures within it. Granite from Egypt was also an essential component of the Pantheon. Each column was one single piece of either granite or marble and weighed around 50 tons. Above all else, the survival of the Pantheon can be attributed to the fact that it attained status as a Christian church. The structure's ability to make it to that point in time is because of the capabilities of Roman engineers and architects. Without the Romans' exceptional understanding of grading the structure by density, it is unlikely that it would have been able to survive the passage of time. Simply put, heavy material was used at the base, and they gradually switched to lighter substances as they made their way to the top of the dome. The dome itself was constructed in stages to allow the mortar that was applied to it to dry properly. By doing so, the Romans were able to ensure that each stage of the dome was able to support itself and the one after. Although the oculus may have served a much deeper purpose, it also eliminated the need for the Romans to add an extra layer of material. I apologize for the pause. I wanted to make sure I was recording. While undergoing a handful of alterations throughout the years, the Pantheon remained in remarkably good conditions. The structure became a popular source of inspiration for many architects throughout the centuries leading up to our modern age. From its consecration as a church to the end of the 11th century, the Pantheon had neither possessed a clergy nor its own congregation. Instead, the Pantheon was mainly used as a stational church and hosted the Pope on feast days. With the goal of expanding its influence as much as possible, the Pantheon's location in the Campus Martius, pictured on this slide, was ideal. Once home to an abundance of exceptional public buildings erected throughout the centuries, the Campus Martius had seen much of its beauty stripped away from it by the passage of time. However, the land still remained densely populated, but it was now home to some of Rome's poorest citizens. The Pantheon was simply unfit to hold regular service due to its design. The existence of the oculus made it particularly difficult to celebrate Mass during the winter months. Feast days were a crucial time for the church to leave its mark on this portion of the population. As time progressed into the 12th century, the Pantheon took on the significance of a different feast day. Instead, the station celebrated was that of the Sunday that announced the arrival of the Holy Spirit. This event is most commonly referred to as Pentecost. The Romans visualized this particular day in an amazing way. Rose petals were dropped from the oculus of the structure onto the congregation below as the priest leading the sermon made the announcement that the Holy Spirit was arriving. In 1444, during the peak of the early Italian Renaissance, Pope Eugenius IV ordered the remodeling of the piazza surrounding the Pantheon to be embellished with statues and antiques. The Renaissance was primarily about the emergence of classical philosophy, literature, and art. It was suddenly more important than ever to promote the existence of structures like the Pantheon. However, the church simply rearranged artifacts found throughout the Pantheon by moving them to the front of the structure in order to make it more visibly appealing to the residents of the Campus Martius. Many religious leaders would carry on the tradition of reallocation within the structure through the centuries after Pope Eugenius IV. Motivation for renovating the Pantheon throughout the Renaissance could be found in appreciation of its architectural beauty. Architects, artists, and engineers alike sought to study the structure. A notable example is the legendary Italian painter Raphael, pictured on the right, who even requested to be buried within the Pantheon. Michelangelo, pictured on the left, was another prominent figure throughout the Renaissance. He spent a lot of time researching and creating theses on the Pantheon. I think most of them have been disproven for the most part, so they're really not worth talking about. But it just goes to show that many brilliant individuals have indulged in their desire to explore the Pantheon, and people still do today. In the mid-17th century, time progressed from the era of the Renaissance to a period marked by the emergence of neoclassicism. The world's evolution into the neoclassical era was expressed through the way in which scholars sought to reinvigorate the classical excellence of the Roman Empire. The Pantheon was the epitome of this era. The elegance of the structure was best represented by a work of art by Giovanni Paolo Panini, a native Italian painter, that depicts the interior of the Pantheon. In stark contrast to the way Panini had attempted to revitalize the beauty of Rome by glorifying the work of antiquity, a number of popes throughout the neoclassical era called for renovations to the Pantheon. However, contrary to their intentions, these projects actually served to make the Pantheon less structurally sound than it originally was. And I apologize for the quality of this image. It's really hard to find one that's not watermarked and like is big enough to stretch out and be visible on a slide. But if you look it up, it's really beautiful. Giovanni Paolo Panini, Pantheon, Neoclassicism. The role of the Pantheon in the 19th century culminated in a handful of important events for the unification of Italy that also helped mend the nation's relationship with the Vatican. Vittorio Emanuele II was the first king of Italy, pictured here on this slide, since the 6th century to rule over a unified Italy. In July 1878, when he passed away, it was crucial that the nation be allowed to come together to celebrate his life. The official funeral was held at the Pantheon. This way, the new royal family would be able to align themselves with the emperors of ancient Rome and solidify their status as a superpower. Italians were skeptical of Rome being able to function properly as the nation's capital. All of their concerns were simultaneously put to rest with this grand ceremony. Every major European nation had a diplomat in attendance. In the eyes of the Vatican, all of Rome is a testament to the magnificence of Christianity. Therefore, the royal family using the Pantheon to reestablish Rome as the epicenter of unified Italy was incredibly beneficial for the church. This is primarily because more capital would be flowing through the city for the church to utilize. Papal rule over Rome had officially been put to rest in 1870, but Italians are a people that take their faith seriously. It was important that the ruling class stayed on good terms with the church in order to win over the rest of Italy. The Pantheon is without a doubt the most celebrated edifice constructed by the Romans to date. Justification for this can be found in the way that the Pantheon has been used as a model for many cathedrals and buildings since the beginning of the 20th century. The Pantheon was even used as a lecture hall for some time during that same period as well. Today, citizens of Rome and tourists alike are allowed to attend Mass regularly at the Pantheon. Many of its old traditions, such as the previously mentioned tradition of dropping rose petals from the oculus on Pentecost, are still practiced today. In conclusion, throughout the ages, the Pantheon has remained a central element of Rome's legacy and an endless source of inspiration for individuals around the world. Its profound elegance has left artists such as Raphael so obsessed with it that they were unable to say goodbye even in death. The sophistication of its architecture, which is the object of study for many architects and engineers alike today, is beyond comprehension. The beauty of the structure continues to bring joy to the community it belongs to through the celebration of the Pentecost, and has even played a major role in the unification of the nation of Italy. The Pantheon is a priceless monument and a gift that humanity should cherish for as long as possible. Thank you so much for a wonderful semester, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Ciao.